Hello everybody, it is Alan, it is Brony time, and welcome back to Apollo Justice Ace Attorney. Yep, that's right, we are continuing on with our adventure today, and without further ado, let's get right into this. And of course, we found out at the end of the last episode that, this, Drew Smith guy is a forger. He is a criminal. And of course, so what is the portrait that we have to analyze? The portrait? Alright. I kind of wanted to see the rough sketch under this painting. And I was wondering if your tool there might do the trick. Oh, fine, fine. Just this time, though. Let's check it out. Okay, so down we go. Oh. We need to, Interesting. Wait a minute. Okay, let's print this out. Wait a second. That's a poker game. Huh. What the heck? Wow, he really blows. The finished painting isn't anything like the rough. Devices like mine didn't exist until recently. He probably thought he could draw any sort of thing he wanted for the rough. What do you mean? Well, in the past, you could only analyze the composition of a rough sketch. Composition? In other words, the traces of charcoal between paint and canvas. So you could tell if there had been a rough sketch. But what it looked like... I think I follow you. So in essence, it wouldn't matter what was underneath the finished painting. Some pros would actually paint out a rough sketch entirely, then do a completely new painting on top of that. So Mr. Mishram was drawing whatever he wanted before painting over them. Possibly. Is there a problem with that? Not particularly, but something about the sketch itself is kind of odd. You're awfully silent all of a sudden, Apollo. You think you could check out one of the other paintings? Well, sure. You like this detective stuff, don't you? What the hell? That's the other case. Okay, let's print this one out. This one too. What's wrong, Apollo? You look so serious all of a sudden. You think you just look at the last of these. Fine by me. Knock yourself out. This is all three of the cases we just did. But how did they know about it? Let me guess, this is gonna be the concert or something? Oh, it's the stage! Okay, let's print this one out. What the fuck? It's so weird. What the heck is all this? I hesitate to ask why you're getting so excited. You're sure your device isn't leaking some kind of strange radiation? Trucy, look at these sketches. Do you notice anything? Ah! There! Now you're both white as sheets. What's going on? These sketches are of the 3 cases I worked on. What? The murder in the poker room at the Borscht Bowl Club. The dead man pulling the noodle stand. And then the events that transpired during the Gaviners concert. What could it mean? How could he have drawn those things? And why? That's what I want to know. Wait, is Drew Misham your father? Give me a break. Does that seem even remotely possible to you? I never even heard of any Drew Misham before. I hadn't even seen a picture of him. But there were my cases, drawn on his canvas. Every single one of them. Couldn't have been a coincidence. Just who was this Drew Misham? And what did he have to do with me? Things are getting weird. Good morning. So, you're Vera, right? I'm Trucy, Trucy Wright. That's right with a W, but not right, right? We're on your side. You can tell us anything, please. Good morning. She speaks? Not bad, not bad. But I think you do better with a little smile, you know? Why don't you smile more? You're so pretty, you need to sell yourself, you know? Trucy, let's take it easy for starters and not use, you know, kind of that terminology. Thank you for taking my case. Okay, well, let's start, I guess. There she goes with the nail polish again. That's great, really. It's so cultured. Want to try? Oh, really? Girls. The victim, Drew Misham, was a forger, and a stolen painting was found in his studio. A life of crime, really? Maybe one that led to his death. Well, we will now begin the trial of Vera Misham. Is the judge okay? His voice is so raspy and he's looking around all nervous like. The repercussions of today's trial will most likely be felt for a long time, and may indeed alter our legal system forever. Today is the test of the justice system, and the first step towards a new order in our courts. Daddy's secret mission. The jurist will function like a jury. It is hoped that inclusion will help the courts to better reflect the people's will. Why aren't there any jurists in the courtroom? 3 closed-circuit cameras watch this courtroom at all times. The jurors have access to everything that transpires. Jurists, Judge Well and Judge Cool. Now see here, Prosecutor Gavin, I was going to say that. Ah, my apologies there, Judge. Jurist, judge today's trial coolly if you would be so kind. The jurors are unbound by the letter of the law. They don't affect the trial with evidence, but by their feelings. And we're about to find out just what effect they're going to have. Very well, Prosecutor Gavin, the details of the case, if you would. The victim is the painter, Drew Misham. He was killed in his own studio. His coffee was poisoned. By whom, you ask? By none other than the defendant, Vera Misham. There wasn't any poison in the coffee. Achtung, someone has been doing their homework. Indeed, poison was not present in the coffee, but on the mug itself. The mug? Ah, residue was found on the rim, I see. The autopsy report describes the manner of his victim's death. The court accepts this as evidence. According to this report, the victim's death was caused by anthraquinine poison, a chemical compound that does not occur naturally. Lethal dosage is a mere 0.002 milligrams. A touch of anthraquinine in the body is the touch of the Reaper's scythe. Very well, Prosecutor Gavin, you may present your witness. I have for today a simple man for a simple case. A man who witnessed the murder in its entirety. That journalist, no doubt. The witness will state his name and occupation. Ah, right. Oh god, what was his voice? Well, for starters, my name's Spark Brushel. My job is a lone observer of the world. In other words, a freelance journalist, right? If you don't mind, I'd like to state something here for the record. Yes, Mr. Brushel? I dislike conclusions, specifically the aspect of jumping to conclusions. Preconceptions make Park Sandbox of endless desert waste. End quote. But you are a journalist. You said so yourself yesterday. Well, that's true, yes. But you must understand, I stand before you today, a man with a dream. I'm offering you my testimony in exchange for exclusive rights to the story. Scoop turns Mr. Brushel into that Mr. Brushel. End quote. Let's hear your testimony then, shall we? Simple case, eh, Gavin? For me, the jury is still out. It's never a simple case. I visited the studio around 9 that night to do the interview. The first outsider to enter the atelier, journalist history made, end quote. His daughter brought us coffee right after we started. And you know what happened next? Star falls, end quote. No one else entered the room besides her the whole time. That does sound like a simple case, unless you were the one who poisoned him. What are you saying, Judge? Ahem. Need I remind you the cameras are rolling today? Felt the need to be a bit dramatic. You didn't do it, did you? Me too, nothing like that. Come on, that's like newsmaker making the news, end quote. Or even contemporary witch hunt, end quote. I know, wild accusations rock courtroom, end quote. Rock indeed. Mr. Gavin sure looks like he's having fun. I'm so happy for him. Very well, Mr. Justice, your cross-examination, please. Star Falls, Tell us more about that. What's this about a star falling? Star Falls, huh? It's like an old telegram. Send money over. Zowie, you don't know? That's like a journalism code word. An important personage passes away, a star falls. Get it? But there's no gravity in space, is there? I would think stars could fall, really. Does this matter? Hoo boy, this is good stuff. Good stuff. How about star breaks? Nah, lacks punch. I know, star dies. Nah, lacks imagination. Of course, you could go with Drew dies, straight to the point. I like it. I think we need to hear about something that's a little bit more substantial. You say Mr. Measham had the coffee too, but did you actually see him drink the coffee? Course. He who sees it wins, but he who says it wins bigger. End quote. I live in a man sees dog eat dog and writes about it world yet. I guess I can't say I saw him drink it really. He had one so-called sip, if that. Man puts lips to mug, drinks, end quote. That poison is quite virulent, I hear. My stomach did a so-called somersault, since I gulped down that coffee without as much as a second glance at it. Wait, maybe something's there, some kind of so-called trick. Anyone want to venture a guess for the record? Does this guy have a pause button? Well, Mr. Justice, did you find that testimony valuable? Very important. The victim drank his coffee, then immediately fell over. Oh, yes, you can go to press with that one. Your Honor, this is a vital piece of information. Please add to the testimony. Very well, the witness will add this to his testimony. Vital, right. Well. Traces of soda atrine was found on the cup rim.
Objection!
You know what I have a problem with? A particular property of the poison used, anthraquinine. Oh, Prosecutor Gavin was quite clear about the poison. Lethal dosage of 0.002 milligrams paralyzed the central nervous system. If you drank that, even you, Mr. Justice, would be reduced to a quivering pile. Are you using me as an example? Unfortunately, we weren't told everything. There was a vital omission of Prosecutor Gavin's information. An omission? Anthraquinine is as virulent as he says, but death doesn't come upon ingestion, not immediately. That's because anthraquinine is slow-acting. Slow-acting? What? According to one forensic scientist. It's one of the most virulent poisons, but it's absorbed into the body astonishingly slowly. It takes at least 15 minutes from the time of ingestion for adverse effects to show. If we suppose that the moment Mr. Mission sipped the coffee was when he sealed his fate, then he would still have had time left to enjoy his last cup of joe. Order! What's the meaning of this? If what the defense says is correct, why, that contradicts the entire testimony we just heard. Well, Mr. Brushel, anything to say on the record? Slow-acting, S-L-O-W-A-C-T. It was virulent, all right. Even then, it had already begun digging its claws into the journalist. He's working on his scoop. It's Brushel, yeah? Brushel, let's take a trip back down memory lane. Huh? Did the victim really die the instant he took a sip? Think it over. This is vital. You know what I think? I think that was a not-so-subliminal suggestion. End quote. I admit it does cause a problem if he died when you say he died. I would be forced to say auf Wiedersehen to my simple case. And you would be forced to say farewell to your art. Come again? You can't write a story based on conjecture, can you? And as the case drags on, other reporters will pick up the scent. And you'll be forced to kiss your exclusive scoop goodbye. Scoop? Look, just wait a second, just 1 second. We're waiting, out with it. I think I just recalled a so-called important detail. A revival of recollection, end quote. A story's survival, end quote. Attorney utterly confused, end quote. Actually, I did notice something when I visited the studio. I'd heard of the poison that takes its sweet time, see? But not what I've been saying for the last few minutes, apparently. Mr. Brushel, are you saying you noticed something that explains what happened? You bet I am. The antidote for a poisonous contradiction, end quote, you might say. Or, I still have no idea what you're talking about, end quote, I might say. I figured it out, but only after an in-depth interview. See, thanks to my journalism skills, I know who poisoned that coffee. Order. As far as I can tell, the witness is standing by his testimony. That Mr. Misham died the instant after he drank. Of course I'm standing by my testimony. And my dream of exclusive rights to this story. I suppose it was too much to hope for. What was? Of course he wouldn't choose a simple case, not him. Him? Phoenix Light. Who else? Achtung, Herr Brushel, report for us if you would. What is it you noticed? This court is a critical trial of the jurors' system. I'm afraid no room for doubt is permissible. You will testify to the court about what you noticed. When I arrived at the studio, Mr. Misham was at his desk. He seemed to be writing a letter, but he quickly sealed the envelope. I thought nothing of it at the time, of course. Now that I think about it, what if he was writing a suicide note? A suicide note? Yes, he had this look on his face. Man's face inscrutable as a quadratic equation, end quote. Suicide? Poor Mr. Misham. That means Vera's innocent. Someone commits suicide in the middle of an interview? Oh. Very well, you may begin your cross-examination. Tell me more about that. So he put the letter away when he saw you. Early reporter gets worm, end quote. That's my secret. I'm not sure I follow. It's the night of the interview. I arrive 15 minutes ahead of schedule. The handle turns, the door opens, and I barge in. Are you sure that's okay to do? I mean, isn't that unlawful entry, really? Mr. Misham sure seemed to think so. You should have seen him. He crammed his letter into that yellow envelope as fast as he could. I know a secret when I spot one, and that was one. It does seem significant. Well, Mr. Justice? I wonder. It does have the ring of something important. Always add it to testimony. That's what I say. The defense finds this testimony vital, Your Honor. Hey, why not? My account comes free of charge. It's not. This one's obvious. It's red. It's red. It's red. Objection! As it just so happens, there was a single letter in a desk drawer at the scene. In a red envelope. What? Prosecutor Gap. Yes, was a yellow envelope found at the scene of the crime. Unfortunately, no, but foreheads, it's easy to mistake the color of an envelope. I guess, but not this envelope. You see, it was postmarked already, 7 years ago. Well, Mr. Brushel, I can explain that. Drew right. He wanted to get that letter in an envelope pronto. Get it out of sight on my beady eyes, right? So he grabbed the nearest envelope and crammed away. What about that whole red and yellow envelope contradiction, chump? Well, Mr. Justice, have you anything to say to the witness's claim? That night, the victim put a letter he had been writing in a red envelope. It's impossible. That's impossible. Ah, I like your expression, so full of confidence. It's simple, really. As it just so happens, the defense team investigated the contents of this envelope with the assistance of a forensic scientist. What? What? Note that this letter is addressed to Drew Misham. Oh! Why would he address a letter to himself? Let alone send a suicide note to himself. I've been scooped! Order, order, order. Mr. Brushel, can you explain this to the court? Oh, my, how could I have forgotten? I suppose this happens to the best of us. Reporter gets old, forgets lots, end quote. I'm still waiting for an explanation, Mr. Brushel. Well, that's the thing, see? After he put his letter in that envelope, Mr. Misham sat there searching his desk drawer for something. His desk drawer? Yes, a stamp, a so-called postage stamp, end quote. A stamp? Whatever for? Well, to mail his letter, what else? And then, why yes, I think I saw him put it in his letterbox. Yes, it was a yellow envelope. And he put it in that box. Well, apparently this yellow letter has nothing to do with the case. Oh, I wish it did. Just think if it were a suicide note. What a story. Star writes suicide note in front of a reporter, falls, end quote. Ahem, as I was saying, that has nothing to do with this case. That's it. Yes, Your Honor. It makes me wonder about the contents of that red envelope. $1,000 is quite a good deal of money. So, this was from 7 years ago, yeah? So, am I finished here? Am I finished here? I was thinking of, going home to start writing. I hate to state what should be pretty obvious to anyone, but when you catch the scent of a story, you make that, rather unique face. Come on! Attorney has active imagination, little else, end quote. Even I noticed something, and my eyes aren't what they used to be. I'm starting to understand what all this perceiving stuff is about. Judge has active imagination, end quote. Please continue with your testimony. Tell us about the scent of a story. Hey, I'm the one asking the questions here, usually. Actually, it took a bit of work to get thumbs up on the interview. Reporter leverages story, gets his interview, end quote. The story concerned a certain case from 7 years ago. That red envelope had something to do with it. Say what you will, but Drew's talent was without compare. So, you threatened to go to press with this story. That's how you got your interview? Blackmail? Well, yes. No. It wasn't exactly black. I'm not... Something wrong, Mr. Brushel. Look, this is my story, my tidbit, journalist info's livelihood, end quote. I see. While you have me chatting away here, what's going on out there? What if some Wally Wordsmith or Sally Scooper gets wind of my story? They could be going to the press while I'm going to waste. The court feels your pain, Mr. Brushel. Mr. Justice, let's pick up the pace. A certain case, 7 years ago. Wait, 7 years ago?
Gotcha!
Sweat much, Mr. Brushel? Yeah, well, a man can't help his glance, It's more than that when Mr. Misham's talent was mentioned. You suddenly began to sweat buckets. You're hiding something about his talent. What? That's ridiculous! Evidence time. Let's show where Mr. Misham's true talent lay. Just so happens I have evidence showing the talent mentioned in the letter.
Take that!
This painting was found in Mr. Misham's studio. There are two problems with this painting. The first is that it wasn't painted by Mr. Misham. The second is that there was another painting in the studio, which looked exactly like this one, except it was only half done. Then we have a letter discussing payment of $100,000, which suggests a certain business operation. The business of making forgeries. That is all, Your Honor. Everyone, please, everyone! Can we keep this private, please? This is my story, my scoop. Forgery, that's a serious crime. Drew Misham is known as an artist these days, but there were rumors he dabbled in another kind of art until a few years back. Another art, meaning forgery? Drew Misham was talented, alright, talented at making precise, detailed fakes. A fact that certain criminal elements were quick to discover. Criminal elements? What? You can't seriously be talking about... Exactly, I'm talking about forging evidence. The rumors started circulating 7 years ago. 7 years ago? So are we to understand that this letter, this payment of $100,000 was for... Exactly. Forged evidence nets tiny profit, end quote. Order, order. Why, it's like our victim was living a double life. Aha, this is my chance. So the victim had ties to the criminal world, right? He could have had plenty of enemies we know nothing about. This is my first time hearing of this criminal world. We certainly found no criminal connections when we conducted our investigation. But how do you explain all this money? You have to admit there's a possibility of some illegal activity going on here.
Objection!
But there is no proof tying this letter to our case. Our case was and remains simple from the beginning. Only the defendant could have poisoned the mugs that night. And you, of course. Hey, the only thing I poison is my pen when I'm writing reviews. Mr. Brusher, your testimony to this point has been quite unreliable. It doesn't speak well of your reporting acumen. What are you talking about? My journalism is rock solid. Journalism so solid you could stand on an elephant on it, end quote. In any case, let's hear a summarized recap of your testimony. If we can ascertain the situation in that studio from the recap, the trial is over. Paulo, what's he talking about? The cross-examination showed Mr. Brushell didn't have a reason or means to poison. As long as there's no other suspects, then the killer had to be Vera, that's what. This next testimony is our last chance. Mr. Brushell, your testimony, please. The only other person in the studio that night was the defendant. It was Vera who poured the coffee. She's admitted as much herself. The only thing that touched Drew's lips during the interview was that mug. And nothing left that studio after he died. Nothing. Clearly, the only one who could have poisoned him was his daughter. A nice testimony, clear, succinct, and without room for doubt. Aw, shucks. You really think so? I believe this clarifies the situation that night. Very well, Mr. Justice, you may begin your final cross-examination. Right, I still have one trump card left to play. I won't let this trial end until I use it. What do you mean nothing was left? Not one thing? You're sure? Yep, sure, it sure can be. Well, with one exception. One exception? What? Journalist Spark Brushell does interview leaves studio. End quote. Come on! It's a joke! Get it? Not funny, I know, but still. Did something leave the studio that night? Why does that sound familiar? Where have I heard something like that before? Now that you've proven our witness is a comedian of sorts, I'd like to turn to our defense attorney before returning to the testimony. Do you have any idea what, if anything, might have left the studio that night? Just one thing. I think one thing might very well have left the studio that night, actually. A certain something that has vanished from the crime scene. By which you mean something other than our witness? Of course. Don't tell me, Vera Michel. Believe me, any comic relief I may provide is entirely unintentional. Now let's see what you got for us, Mr. Justice. Well, this thing wasn't the scene of the crime, so I can't show it to you. But I do have evidence that shows how it could have been taken from the scene. The letter. The yellow letter he said he saw put in the box, because we know that this letter box, You know, it connects. It sends letters somewhere to where the postman can get it.
Take that!
This is the only link between that studio and the outside world. A letterbox? What did Mr. Brushel just tell us? When he entered the studio on the night of the murder, the victim had just finished writing a letter. Yeah, I said that, and yeah, it was true. Furthermore, you went on to tell us that he put the letter in a yellow envelope and put it in the letterbox. Ah! But that very same letterbox was empty. In other words, that night, the yellow envelope disappeared. Ah, yes, intriguing. So an envelope has disappeared from the scene of the crime. Of course, this changes nothing, huh? He has a point, Mr. Justice. What we're trying to figure out here is how the poison got into Mr. Mitchell. Is it really important that this envelope the witness says he saw disappeared? Well, if it did disappear, then something did leave the studio that night. That seems very important to me. Very well, then the witness will add this to his testimony. You got it. I still think this fails to change anything, Air Forehead. I wouldn't be so sure. The letter disappeared from the crime scene that night. It's exactly the opening I've been looking for.
Hold it!
You're sure about that? Well, to be really precise, I was busy gobbling mint candies the whole time. One of those candies might have been poison. At the time of the autopsy, no fresh fragrance of mints filled the room, and no mint residue was found. It was a long shot anyway. Don't tell me you're still trying to prove this. You think the victim ate, drank, or otherwise ingested something other than the coffee. Well, Mr. Justice, if you have some proof. Possibility is I can feel just maybe not prove it, not yet. The possibility isn't going to cut it, not now. Mr. Measham ingested that poison via a route other than coffee. Proof is possible. Here goes nothing. You do understand what we need, ja? Proof, Air Forehead. Not possibilities. Of course. And Prosecutor Gavin, I hope you understand. I'm ready to give you that proof. But what did you say? I have proof of the disappearing envelope. I saw him writing a letter. I did! Which was picked up by the mailman, I assume. Of course, which means that envelope had a stamp on it. A stamp? Ah! As we all know, stamps come with dried glue on the back. In order to use the glue, you have to wet it by licking the stamp. No one worth talking to actually licks stamps in this day and age. Even if you wanted to talk to him, you couldn't. He's dead after all. Okay, so he licks the stamp, but wait! How does that explain the autocanine on the rim of the coffee mug? If he licked the back of a poisoned stamp, the poison would get on his tongue, yes? What would then happen if he put the coffee mug to his mouth, Those traces on the mug weren't the killer's doing. It was the other way around. What? The coffee mug didn't poison Mr. Measham. Mr. Measham poisoned the coffee mug himself. Order, order, order! But what? That doesn't, does it? Recall, if you would. Antracanine is a selecting poison, yes. The poison entered his body when he put the stamp on that envelope. But his time wasn't up until the very moment he touched his lips to that cup of joe. You have something to add, Mr. Brushel? Uh-oh, his nose is picking up another scent. As I believe I mentioned earlier. Well, that's the thing, see, after he put his letter in that envelope, Mr. Measham sat there searching his desk drawer for something. Yes, a stamp, a so-called postage stamp, end quote. But you know, I don't seem to remember him ever finding one. Maybe he just run out. Incidentally, we searched the desk drawer at the scene of the crime. There were no stamps, not a single one. That does pose a problem. How will you prove that the stamp was coated with poison? Actually, I'm glad no other stamps were found. It makes proving the stamp he used was poisoned possible. Good show, good show. You can't even prove there was a stamp at the scene in the first place. Well, let's hear what the defense has to say anyway. Where's your evidence that proves the existence of this poisoned stamp?
Take that!
Well, that certainly is a cute little frame. And by little, I mean really little. It was the victim's desk, Your Honor. Quite empty, as you can see for yourself. I noticed that too during my inspection, so what? Ah, apparently you weren't as observant as you should have been. You see, when you saw this frame, it was missing something quite important. Missing something? Yes, a pale bluish stain on the inside of the frame. Actroquinine residue. What? Why wasn't I told about this? The frame is only 2 inches square. The face of the frame is even smaller. Maybe an inch wide at most. You are insane. Oh, but I am. Tell me, what fits in such a small frame? A commemorative stamp, perhaps? Order, order, order! The poison stamp was in this frame? Impossible! Prosecutor Gavin, why would you put something like that on his desk? Don't tell me he had it there so he could commit suicide if the mood struck. You know, can I say something? I had a thought, see? What, Mr. Marshall? Please stop jittering around like that. The victim was a forger, right? There's a lot of money in that line of work. Forger forges, friends makes enemies too. End quote. So this poison stamp might have been a murder weapon aimed at him. Oh, Rich. That's Rich. Leave the ridiculous flights of fancy to the Gaviner's song lyrics, please. Finally, something we agree on. The stamp was a murder weapon. Was a murder weapon? Nonsense. Murder is a simple business. Who would go to such lengths? No one. Oh, I disagree. Come again? Recall, if you would, the victim's reclusive lifestyle. Drew Misham hid from the world. He avoided meetings. His only contact with the outside world was the mail. The mail? Now, if you wanted to kill someone you couldn't meet, but you knew red letters, a stamp would be the perfect weapon. Ridiculous. Where's your proof? I want proof. Show us evidence that this poison stamp was sent to him as a murder weapon. I might have evidence per se. Things are finally starting to come together. What is it, Apollo? Your fists are trembling. I think I know what happened. I don't believe it, but I can see it. I think I know how Mr. Misha was killed. Well, fill us in, Mr. Justice. A certain piece of evidence points to the truth, Your Honor. I can show you someone with the intent to kill sent Mr. Misham a stamp of death. This red envelope is the person who was paying them the $100,000. Isn't this the envelope, the one from 7 years ago? Think about the text of the letter again. There was 2 pages in the envelope. This page is 1. And this is page 2. I want you to draw your attention to one phrase in particular. Send in the enclosed envelope with the enclosed stamp within 3 days. The enclosed stamp, Your Honor. In other words, if I have this straight, the stamp, poison on the stamp, like gasp, end quote. Now, what if he had done exactly as the letter asked? He would sign the document, put it in the envelope, and put the stamp on it, right? Then he would put it in his letterbox. 15 minutes wouldn't have elapsed between affixing the stamp and mailing the letter. The clock started ticking, and when the time came, he drew his last breath, and the murder weapon would be taken away from the scene. Quite conveniently, thanks to the postal system. Such a splendid imagination you have, Air Foreheads. Let me confirm one thing with you, if I might. So this poison stamp was inside this envelope from 7 years ago, yeah? Is that what you'd have us believe, really? Well, it is a little bit of a stretch, but there's a possibility. Yes, a very small possibility. How small, I wonder? A poison stamp in this envelope, a stamp that then became the murder weapon. How do you intend to prove this seeming coincidence? Well, it was 7 years ago, and we don't even know who sent the letter. And your answer is silence, I see. Very well, I move to... It's not nice to pick on the Fräulein, Clavier. Ah, Emma? Well, like my Christoph Gavin impression? Did I sound like him? Don't quit your day job. Don't you have a crime scene to be looking after, Fräulein Detective? Someone had to come dig you all out of a mess you're making of this case. Mess? You know, none of this would have happened if you just trusted in science a little more. You can find out if that stamp was in that envelope easy. Get to explain yourself, Fräulein Detective. Glare at me all you want, but science is on my side. It's all in the residue, right? That's right, the poison detection spray. Produce the red envelope at once. You can open it on the authority of the court. Aha! Well, would you look at that? No mistaking it, that's Entrepreneur residue. I don't believe it. A murder weapon from the past. Now 7 years later, it bears its fangs at last.
Objection!
Absolutely outrageous. Tell me why. Why didn't this murder take place 7 years ago? Well, there's one possibility. Maybe Mr. Measham figured it out. Figured out what? He realized that the person who sent the letter wanted him dead. So he sent his reply with a different stamp. And put his decisive evidence in a frame. Ah, you're still here? Can I make a statement here on the record? I, Spark Razor Toothbrush, claim this scoop as mine. Drew Measham killed in cold blood by sender of 7-year-old letter, end quote. No, maybe something more succinct. Star falls after 7-year delay, end quote. Order, order, order. I see no room for further argument here. Though I admit this is all coming as quite a shock. To think that the murder weapon reached his mouth after 7 years. Stamp his ticket straight to afterlife, end quote. Uh-oh, I think the witness is a bad influence on our judge. I see no need for further debate on this matter. The sender of that letter 7 years ago could hardly have been our defendant. Apollo, I think we just won. Very well, this court finds the defendant. Is this the bright future of our legal system? Prosecutor Gavin? A ticket to the afterlife from 7 years ago. Tickets for Gavin shows are invalid after 2 weeks. But it doesn't make sense any other way. It boggles my mind that so many people haven't noticed this. There's a fatal contradiction in Air Forehead's claim. A contradiction? A poison stamp was placed in this envelope 7 years ago. Thereupon it was framed until now. If that's the case, then why would Drew Measham have done what he did? Emma explained that. He must have realized it was poison. Therein lies the rub. 7 years ago, the forger Drew Measham sensed a trap and puts the stamp in a frame. I do not debate this, but this begs the question. Why 7 years later did he use that stamp on the night of the murder? Ah, surely you don't mean to suggest that Mr. Measham simply forgot. He put the murder weapon in a frame on his desk You expect us to believe he sprang the trap on himself? It does seem highly unlikely that he would fall afoul of a trap. Well, I admit this is all quite shocking myself. Dad had been sitting on his desk for 7 years. Apollo, I don't think we're winning anymore. I'm glad to see we're all back in the real world now. Welcome back to reality. We've been waiting for you. Okay, then how do you explain the poison stamp that was in this envelope? The poison stamp? Where exactly is this poison stamp again? Have you brought it to the court for us? I see no proofs that such a thing ever existed. What about the anthraquinine residue, huh? Oh, I agree, that does seem to be anthraquinine residue. But, our foreheads, it's certainly no stamp. Yeah, but even if your precious poison stamp did exist, Jumisham never would have used it. That is all. I believe we've come to a conclusion. Again. Apollo, we were wrong the whole time? I can't believe it. The poison traces match up. It can't be coincidence. I'd like to bring some closure to this issue sometime this year. Mr. Justice? Yes, Your Honor. Let's review the facts and see where we stand. 7 years ago, Drew Bishop received a red envelope. There were traces of the poison anthraquinine on the document inside that envelope. A similar trace was also found at the crime scene. On this tiny picture frame, defenses indicate the possibility of a yellow envelope, an envelope that left the scene of the crime with the poison stamp on it. Yes, but even if this envelope contained a poison stamp, and Drew Measham, knowing this, put it in a frame, he never would have used that stamp. I'm afraid you're right, which means there is a fatal flaw in the defense's case. I have been on the wrong track this whole time, I'm sure of it. Traces of anthraquinine, the envelope, the frame, and Drew Measham's mysterious death. They're all connected somehow. Well, Mr. Justice, do you have a conclusion for us? The defense stands by its case, Your Honor. We've seen that the logical outcome of the evidence makes no sense, which means that one of our clues must be a fake. Ah, a fake clue, fascinating. And if he finds this fake, your wild fantasies will prove quite reasonable, yeah? The fake clue that's thrown us off this poison trail is none other than Drew Mission. The victim was a fake clue? I'm afraid I don't understand. I'll explain. We have an envelope, a frame, and a mug linked by poison. That all makes sense. What doesn't make sense is the victim himself. Congratulations, you've completely lost me. So the fake evidence is none other than the master of the fake himself, the forger. It makes a good story, I'll give you that. The fake clue. Fakes. Forgeries. Ah! I know that face. That's the I just had an idea face. I don't know if I'm right, but I'm going with it anyway. What if our forger is the fake? Come again. 7 years ago, our forger sniffed a trap and stepped aside. 7 years passed. Now the forger stumbles into that very same trap and dies. Why? That's what I want to know. Because the forger who was killed was a fake. Here we are again. The victim was a fake? One forger smelled the trap. One forger fell into the trap. That's 2 forgers, and one of them was a fake. Order, order, order. So you are telling us that Drew Measham, the victim, was a fake. Well, if he was the fake, who was the real forger? You better not be claiming that for some kind of switcheroo. I'm afraid you're going to have to back up your story. Mr. Justice, show us just who the real Drew Measham was. Drew Measham wasn't the real forger. There's only one other person it could have been. Understood, Your Honor. Forger Drewmation was himself a forgery. The real forger was... And we will point out that forger next time on Apollo Justice. Oh boy, things are getting spicy now. And I think I might know exactly who this forger is. There is only really one other person we know so far that could have been the forger in this case, but we will do that next time. And until then, thank you all for watching. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe to Brony Time for more content, especially more Apollo Justice Ace Attorney. Also, make sure to share this video far and wide so it can reach as many eyes as possible. I will see you all next time.